And welcome back to the FRM Video on Demand series. I am Greg Philbeck, and I'm going to be guiding you through a summary reading related to machine learning. In this particular reading, we will be going through and summarizing across all of the content that's associated with machine learning as a part of the FRM curriculum. We'll also look at a couple of examples on topics that are covered in the curriculum with computations to be able to get you ready for the FRM exam. Let's begin by talking about machine learning methodologies. And in order to introduce this conversation, I think it's really important that we understand what machine learning is all about. And basically, what we're trying to do with machine learning is to work on identifying and recognizing data patterns for practical applications. And these can either be prediction in nature or classification. In order to understand why machine learning is important, we have to understand why we can't use more conventional methods such as econometrics to be able to solve our problems. And we know with econometrics, particularly if we're working with large data, which is where machine learning is so helpful, that with large data, big data, if you will, we end up with situations where if we're to use conventional methodologies, we know that standard errors associated with very, very large samples are going to be very, very small, which means that if we use traditional regression-based techniques, it will be relatively easy for us to reject a null hypothesis simply because the standard error is so small for these large samples. So as a result, we need something that will allow us to work with big data. We need something that will allow us to be able to look at complex models. And we also need to be able to look at issues related to nonlinearity. And in addition to these points, it's important to also recognize that in the world of econometrics, we end up with situations where we're using more of the conventional, what's the theory, what's the model that we can use to describe the theory, and then let's test the data. With machine learning, we often are incorporating in bottom-up methods to be able to make discoveries based on what the data is telling us, independent of any sort of modeling framework or a greater theory. Now, we also recognize in machine learning, there's a variety of different techniques that are out there. Three of those are discussed in the curriculum, and I want to spend just a couple of minutes reviewing two of those methods, and that would be the methods associated with supervised learning versus unsupervised learning. And the very basic difference between the two is that with supervised learning, we're trying to make predictions from the data, and with unsupervised learning, we're trying to identify patterns. And the critical difference is that the data is not going to include target values or labels when we're dealing with unsupervised learning. In other words, we are going